StudyJesus.com presents Bible Stories, where biblical stories of the ages come alive.
Continuing with our series called The Early Church, we turn now to the 12th chapter of Acts, verses 1 through 24, for our next true Bible story titled, How the Iron Gate Was Opened.
StudyJesus.com presents Bible Stories with your host, Dr. Joe Jackson. Stories directly from God's holy word, told in easy-to-understand story form that the whole family will enjoy, and featuring the work of a talented artist illustrating each week's story. Now gather the family because it's time for this week's Bible story.
In the years while Jesus was teaching, Jerusalem and the part of the land near it was ruled by a Roman governor whose name was Pilate. You remember he was the ruler who sent Jesus Christ to the cross. After some years, the emperor at Rome, who ruled all the lands around the Great Sea, gave all the country of the Jews to a man named Herod Agrippa and made him king of Judea. This Herod was the nephew of the Herod who killed John the Baptist, and the grandson of the other Herod, called Herod the Great, who killed all the little children of Bethlehem while trying to destroy the little child, Jesus. At the time when Peter saw the vision on the housetop and preached to the Gentiles, Herod Agrippa was the king of Judea. Herod wanted to please the Jews in Jerusalem, so he seized the apostle James, the brother of John, and one of the three disciples who had been nearest to Jesus. And he caused his guards to kill James with the sword, just as John the Baptist had been killed by his uncle, Herod Antipas. When he saw how greatly this act pleased the chief priests and the rulers, he also laid hands on Simon Peter and put him in prison, intending at the next feast of the Passover to lead him forth and put him to death. Therefore Peter was kept in prison, with 16 soldiers around the prison to guard him, 4 soldiers watching him all the time. But all the church prayed earnestly to God for him. On the night before the day when Peter was to be brought out to die, he was sleeping in the prison, bound with 2 chains, while guards were watching. Suddenly, a bright light shone in Peter's cell, and an angel from the Lord stood by him. The angel struck him on the side and awakened him and said, "Rise up quickly." And as Peter awakened and stood up, his chains fell from his hands, and the angel said to him, "Tie your girdle about your waist and bind your sandals on your feet." And Peter did as he was told, still quite groggy and scarcely knowing what he was doing. And then the angel said, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." Peter followed the angel, thinking that he was dreaming. They passed the first guard of the soldiers and the second, but no one stirred to hinder them. And then they came to the great iron gate on the outside of the prison. And this opened to them as if unseen hands were turning it. They went out of the prison into the city and passed through one street. And then the angel left Peter as suddenly as he had come to him. By this time, Peter was fully awake, and he said, "Now I'm sure that the Lord has sent this angel and has set me free from the power of King Herod." Peter thought of what he should do and where he should go. And he turned toward the house of a woman named Mary, who was near of kin to Barnabas, and who had a young son named John Mark, who many years later wrote the Gospel according to Mark. In Mary's house, many were met together, and they were praying for Peter. Peter came to the house and knocked on the outside door and called out to those who were inside. A young woman named Rhoda came to the door. She listened and at once recognized the voice of Peter. And she was so glad that she didn't think to open the door, but ran into the house and told them all that Peter was standing at the door. And they said to her, "You're crazy." But she said she was sure that Peter was there because she knew his voice. And then they said, "It must be an angel who has taken Peter's form." But Peter kept on knocking, and when at last they opened the door and saw him, they were filled with wonder. With his hand he beckoned to them to listen, and he told them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And Peter said to them, "Tell these things to James and to the other apostles." And then he went away to a place where Herod and his men couldn't find him. The morning came, and there was a great stir among the soldiers as to what had become of Peter. Herod the king sought for Peter, but he couldn't find him, and he was so angry that he ordered that the guards in the prison be put to death. And not long after this, Herod himself died, and he died so suddenly that many believe that his death came from the wrath of God upon him. So Herod perished, but Peter, whom he sought to kill, lived many years working for Christ. The James of whom Peter spoke when he said, "Tell these things to James," was not James the apostle, the brother of John, because that James had already been put to death by Herod. He spoke of another James, a son of Joseph and Mary, a younger brother of Jesus, one who was always called the Lord's brother. This James was a very holy man and a leader of the church there in Jerusalem, where he lived for many years. Sometime after this, James wrote the book of the New Testament called the Epistle of James.
Precious memories, unseen angels, sent from somewhere to my soul.